It's principles that matter. And this city's abandoned them. You have to find out what your principles are, what you believe in. You're not going to agree with me on all issues. Some don't agree with me on any. So how do you all make certain that doesn't happen to you? That's why I'm here. So that you understand. You can't say, I didn't know what to do. Because I'm going to tell you exactly how you can make certain that when it's your turn, you stand up to the pressure. That when the firestorm comes your way, that it doesn't affect you. You walk right through it. It's not easy. It is not easy. But it's very, very simple to do. Most of you are still in school. Otherwise, you're mingling with other young people, one way or the other. You have to pick an issue that you do feel strongly about. I feel strongly about many issues. Not all of them, but many of them. And so you pick one. Pick the war, if that's one strong. Pick immigration. Pick life. Pick either side of it. I don't care. Pick an issue and start there. Preferably a controversial one. All right? Because that's the key. And then you go and you find, let's say life. You go and you find you're on college campuses or in a community of people more than likely pro-choice. It won't be too hard. And you go and you sit down and you say, yeah, my golly, I heard you were pro-choice. How could you possibly be pro-choice? You know, every single time a baby's life is taken, and they're going to look at you and think, where did this person come from? And they're going to be just astounded that you would confront them like this. And you don't have to be mean or angry. You can just be shocked. And then they'll say to you, what about the 14-year-old raped by their dad? You telling me they should be required to have the child? Is that what you're about? And you know what's going to happen? You're going to be very nervous, hesitant. You're going to want to back out of this. You're going to say, how did I get into this? Because you don't know the answer. Because you haven't debated the issue before. So what do? You go back and you start talking to some pro-lifers. What do you say about this? Is a good point they have. What do we do about the 14-year-old? Maybe you're for rape and incest. The exception for rape and incest. I'm not. You might be. It's fair enough. You might learn a little bit more about what you stand for. Or you might learn that in every single abortion, not only is the victim the baby, but the woman is also a victim. You might learn the increase in psychological drug use, mental depression, all kinds of problems, medical problems, psychological problems, the scars they carry because they realize that indeed one day they wake up and said, oh, it was a child. It was my child. You meet some of the women who've had abortions. It doesn't take long to realize what an awful, awful thing this is. So then you feel a little more emboldened. You start learning a little bit more. And maybe you come out and say, no, just like I do, when it comes to a child, it's always a child. It doesn't matter what the conception is. Who am I to pick which ones live and which ones die? I have no authority to do that. So I'm not for any exceptions. All right, that's one of the possibilities. So then you go back. You feel like, okay, I have this answer now. But that is their best argument. So you have to throw it another way. So you learn it. You come back. And you say, okay, you're so hot on exception on the rape thing. Well, what about viability? You think they should be? And then you throw them on the defensive. You start working. You go back and you go forth, back and forth. And I'm going to tell you what you're going to learn. You're going to learn two things. First of all, you're going to learn the issue and where you stand. And you're going to understand. You're going to see the eyes of people who've had abortions. And you're going to realize this is a terrible thing. And that's going to give you much more passion and a much clearer vision. So you speak with much more boldness. And then you're going to learn another thing. When you are in the presence of others who are coming down on you, who are yapping at you and pushing you, and you're alone in essence, and you feel, oh my gosh, I don't know the answers. That's when you thank the Lord. You know why? Because you know you're not ready. That doesn't matter if this happens a month from now, 2 months from now, because you can go home and get the answers. And then you come back the next day. And I'm telling you, I've been debating liberals for, how many years? I don't want to tell you. And they don't have more than 2 arguments. So by the time you get to the third debate, you're solid. I promise. Okay? It's solid. You learn the issues. This is what it is. It's just like anything else. It's like basketball. You go out and you practice that play, you practice it. Pretty soon you got it down. At first you might have said, that's way difficult. I'm never going to be able to do this. By the time you got it, you think it's a breeze. Okay? You start working these issues. I'm telling you. You guys have to be leaders today. Today, I think of a class that you might be in, and a teacher mentions Roe v. Wade. Again, I'm hitting the issue of life, but it applies whether it's whatever issue you've chosen. You know the war comes up. You know other issues come up, and you raise your hand if you're pro-life. And you make a point of making a case for the unborn child. You be the voice of the unborn child. You sit there and you say, I know I'm going to be feeling really bad in about 30 seconds, but I'm doing it for them. Okay? And then you make a statement. You say, you know, Professor, you made this case just now about Roe v. Wade. That is not a legal decision that can be supported by anyone. Even the left wings, who are liberals, who are really jurists and are legal experts who really understand the Constitution, agree. Thin cloth. There's nowhere. The thing doesn't exist. You make it. You decide where you're comfortable. And you raise your hand and you say, maybe you want to say, listen, you know, you talk about Roe v. Wade and a choice. What about the baby's choice? However you want to say it. You make a case for the unborn. I'll tell you what. You don't know who's in that classroom. Do you know how people have never heard anyone speak passionately for the unborn? Who've never made a case that indeed it's a life? And when you do that, you don't know who's in that class. Maybe nobody there is making a decision for a year, 2 years, 3 years. But somebody's going to be impressed with your boldness, your courage, and they're going to think, why would they do that? Well, only reason they do this is because you really believe it. And that is leadership. That's who people follow. And so they might think 2 years from now, when they are faced with a tough decision, you know, everybody says it's not a big deal, but I remember what she said. I was pretty impressed with what that person said. And they might just hesitate. In which case you save the life of an individual. You don't know when you're influencing people, but I'll guarantee you when you're not. When you're not opening your mouth. And so my hope and prayer is that each one of you will recognize you have an obligation. You have an obligation today. Most of you are far more educated than those around this country. You have a unique opportunity to see up close how this system works. Your responsibility is even greater. And that responsibility comes directly from our founding fathers. They were willing to put down life, limb. They were willing to put all their property on the line for us. We have young people overseas ready to do the same today. Can you do it in your way? And that's what you're being called to do, because this nation is desperate for leaders. Desperate. Thank you all very, very much.